All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mike, and you have now arrived at my train of thought. It's also time to once again ask the question, where do we go from here? So the last video in this series, I focused on the wildcard teams. And with this video, I'm going to focus on the 4 teams that made the divisional round. Let's talk about the Packers. So for Green Bay, I would consider them the most overachieving team in the NFC. Now, yes, I thought Green Bay would make the playoffs, but they all came of age in the latter half of the season. Jordan Love really started to figure some things out towards the end and was way more efficient than he was at the start of the year. Romeo Doubs played well. Christian Watson, when he was healthy, played well. Latavius Wicks balled out. Jalen Reed played well. Green Bay got it together. And then Luke Musgrave at the tight end spot got it together. A lot of lightning came from those guys at the receiver and tight end positions. Though David Bakhtiari's injuries clearly failed him, their offensive line held up and was at least respectable. I give him credit for that. Now, Joe Barry in the defense was not great. He did not do a well enough and efficient enough job, I would say, to keep his job. And I think Green Bay Packer fans are very happy about that. So enter Jeff Haley, who spent the last 4 years at Boston College, and BC was a pretty decent team. It just didn't have the athletes to keep up with the heavyweights in the ACC. But I think Haley can do a decent job as the Packers' new DC. He can't be much more vanilla than Joe Barry was. Anyway, Green Bay has a lot of young talent, but they also had a really good veteran in Aaron Jones. Unfortunately for Packer fans, Aaron Jones is now gone and he's a Viking. And maybe part of this was because they had signed Josh Jacobs, who is a former rushing title winner, obviously. And Jacobs will bring some thunder to add to A.J. Dillon's obvious abundance of thunder. I think that move is going to work out pretty well with all the lightning they have at the receiver spots. The Packers also made a move to get Xavier McKinney to replace Darnell Savage. And I think that's going to be a pretty solid move when it comes to the safety room. Good work there by Green Bay, who normally does not make moves like this. That was very different to see that. Green Bay still has some things they could possibly address. I would imagine one of those things could be replacing David Bakhtiari with maybe as early as the 24th pick in the draft. Now, thanks to the Aaron Rodgers trade, they also have pick 41, and they have their own second-round pick at 58. So Green Bay can address several needs and really continue to help make a major step forward because they were a couple of plays away from the NFC Championship. Can Green Bay continue to make things happen and make the rest of the NFC North miserable with these moves? Now, the Texans weren't as close to the AFC Championship as the Packers were to the NFC title game, but what Houston did needs to be studied. This was easily the most improved team in the league last year, and the fact that they were able to go from laughingstock to real contender in basically a year and a half is incredibly impressive. We were all laughing at them because of the way they blew their opportunity to get in the first overall pick. And then they promptly got it right with DeMeco Ryans at coach, and then C.J. Stroud at quarterback, and then going draft day challenge and trading up with the Cardinals to go get Will Anderson. So high-level coaching, and you got the offensive and defensive players of the year, rookie-wise, on your team in one fell swoop. And then Tank Dell balled out as a rookie. Nico Collins balled out and then played really well. Dalton Schultz was the security blanket that Stroud absolutely needed. Now, Houston's not perfect. Their offensive line is a little unstable when Laramie Tones was not on the field, and their defense can be had by good, talented teams. Houston's got plenty of opportunities to make moves on that. They also could have used the number 1 receiver. Though Dell and Collins are very productive, neither of them, I would say, keep defensive coordinators up at night, per se. Stephon Diggs might, and at his peak of powers, absolutely did. Stephon Diggs for 4 years was a monster in Buffalo, but it seemed like drama kind of followed him, and the clock, I think, started ticking with that divisional round game against the Bengals when he was yelling at Josh Allen. And from then, seemed like his time in Buffalo was on borrowed time. He probably got traded to Houston, and now, yes, they gave up a second-round pick next year, the Texans did, and yes, they're paying him a good amount of money. It's only a one-year deal, and we'll see what Houston's able to do with it, but now their offense looks scary. I didn't even mention Joe Mixon yet, who's had another 1,000-yard year in Cincinnati. Their offense, again, looking kind of scary. They do need to improve their defense, and maybe part of the reason why they traded down with the Vikings was to replenish and get some more picks. They will be picking 42nd, and part of the trade that they made with Buffalo will send that second-round pick I just mentioned. It's coming from Minnesota. It's not even theirs. Houston will be picking, as I mentioned, 42nd. That's part of the Viking deal. And they will also be picking 59th with their own second-round pick. I would imagine and like to think that they're going to want to address the secondary. Kind of get some corner help alongside Darryl Stingley Jr. Maybe to go offensive line to help and make it stable. I think that would be very beneficial. I do like other moves that they made because Danico Autry is low-key a very good defensive lineman. And he and Azeez Al-Shaair are both coming from Tennessee on some pretty solid deals. Good moves by Houston. I don't think anyone's laughing at the Texans anymore. And now there's Tampa Bay as we shift from divisional round Saturday to divisional round Sunday. There's no shame in how the Bucs went out. They played pretty well. They won a playoff game, and Baker Mayfield looked very efficient. Mike Evans is another example of death taxes, and he gets another 1,000-yard season because that's all he does as he adds to a probable Hall of Fame career. Chris Godwin, also a productive player. They can't run the ball, which is wild because I like Rachaad White, but they are somehow still last in rushing. Second straight year that happened. And their offensive line, though Trisha Wirfs is excellent, the rest of it is kind of meh. That could stand to get better. But anyway, Tampa Bay is a pretty solid team when they're not getting cooked over the top as well, because that is one thing that did happen on defense. They would get beat deep, and they would get beat kind of soundly deep. It's kind of unfortunate, despite Antoine Winfield Jr. having an all-pro season. They had to replace some people in the secondary, and they did that. Tampa Bay outwent Carlton Davis, who was one of the main victims of getting cooked over the top the way he did. And in comes Bryce Hall, who comes from the Jets. Joining him from the Jets is Jordan Whitehead, who I would imagine will play as the free safety or the strong safety, if you will. Either one, he'll play alongside Winfield in that spot. So I think they got the safety spot down nicely. I would imagine they could go after a cornerback at some point in this draft. Taveri Thomas is a solid player, but I'd imagine they'd go after a corner in the draft somewhere and somewhere soon. Maybe they could possibly address the center position because of Ryan Jensen's retirement due to his injuries. He unfortunately really didn't play since the Super Bowl win, and Tampa Bay really has felt his presence not being there at the center spot on offense. Tampa Bay does have the 26th pick in the draft, and like I've mentioned before, this is a really good offensive line draft. Fortunately for them, there are two main centers. Unfortunately for them, there are two teams in front of them that I've already discussed that could certainly use them. What will happen there? And now the final team in the divisional round format that didn't get past it. Wide right 2. It is the most devastating sentence you could say when it comes to Western New York. And Buffalo's season, you would argue down the stretch, probably didn't deserve a fate like this. But that's the fate it got. They were basically playing with 9 lives after the Eagles loss. The first 6 they had to burn based off of wins they needed to get to in order to qualify for the divisional round. They had to burn 2 of them on Dolphin losses, one to the Titans, one to the Ravens, to make sure that Week 18 was a winner-take-all game, and that the loser would fall to the 6th seed. And then the 9th life, where time and time again, it felt like they were avoiding death like it was Final Destination Challenge. They had those 2 devastating fumbles that Dalton Kincaid smartly recovered and or knocked out of bounds, though that wasn't penalty. But they'll take it over a turnover, obviously. They had the really dumb fake punt attempt with DeMar Hamlin, which was incredibly stupid and still got bailed out because of the touchback rule. They should not change that rule. Please don't. And yet, they got in their own way at the end. Whether it was Josh Allen, instead of taking the singles and doubles, going for home runs back-to-back and missing both of them, whether it was the Stephon Diggs drop that kind of hurt things, whether it was Trent Sherfield's drop that hurt things, and then, of course, the fateful kick, where Tyler Bass had an opportunity to tie the game at 27, and instead, the ball is hooking left into the uprights, and then about halfway through, it hooks to the right. And from there, it felt like the air at Ralph Wilson Stadium no longer existed. Kansas City at least made this ending quick. It was certainly painful, but at least made it quick with 2 Pacheco runs and the game was over. Although snowballs were thrown at Chiefs players, namely Pat Mahomes, misery was had in Buffalo. And like Miami, as I mentioned before, with their devastatingly bad cap situation, Buffalo was in a similar spot. And Buffalo had to let go a whole lot of their main talent that helped them have the success they've had over the last 4 years. Those big 3 in their secondary that has held it down, all 3 of them are gone. Hyde is gone. Tre'Davious White went to the Rams. And, of course, Jordan Poyer, who is a very good safety in his own right, he's now in Miami, ironically. Jordan Phillips was a former Dolphin, is now a former Bill. He is no longer a Buffalo Bill at this moment in time. You had the departures of Mitch Morse and Gabe Davis, both good players. Morse, a very good center. They're both in Duval County now. And I just mentioned Diggs, who got traded to Houston. Buffalo had a lot of their main pieces, a lot of the leadership council, all gone. Josh Allen has had to play the role of Superman. He may have to do it again this coming season, as Buffalo maybe takes a bit of a reset year. Who knows? What Buffalo also is going to probably have and need to use is the 28th pick and probably on a wide receiver. After losing your first and best 2 receivers, and yes, you got Chris Samuel. I think it's a fine high-end 3, low-end 2 type of receiver. That does not replace anywhere near the damage that you're going to lose with Diggs and Davis. Shakir was solid, but again, you need a frontline number 1 receiver, I think, to really make things happen. Maybe Buffalo is going to try to go the route of decent receivers and then a really good tight end play. And obviously a good running back in James Cook with a superhuman at the quarterback spot. With some good defense, because Matt Milano should be back. Can Buffalo get it done this way? Or will this season, like many other seasons, end either short or wide of the goal? You have now reached the final stop of this train of thought. The next train will pick up with the conference championship and Super Bowl teams. The Final 4, if you will. That would be the Lions, the Ravens, the Niners, and the Tribal Chiefs. I would have to ask the question, where do they go from here?